Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete for Anxiety here, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about in. Welcome in today's episode. Before we get started today, we need to cover a few things really quick. Let's talk about the Pete for Anxiety Patreon first off. It's only $1, guys. $1. What does $1 get you? $1 gets you into the exclusive episodes I am recording currently. I'm actually focusing on certain different diagnoses of things to show you guys what it actually looks like as it manifests in a person. So why not for $1, judges? Yeah, they said $1. I just checked with them too. See, they said it was okay. It was $1 anyways. Let's also talk about the Oracle Talk Radio Networks app. In case you can't be here live listening to me, watching this video, supporting the show, you can listen to it on the radio app. Why not? It connects us live to our 365 radio. Just go to your app stores and download the Oracle Talk Radio Network. You'll see the big old Oracle Talk Radio Network app logo right on there. Download it, and it'll connect you to me, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, to Pete for Anxiety when I'm live doing my thing right here, informing the world and raising mental health awareness. So where are you going to be? 10 a.m. Of course. Come on. We just talked about this. Pay attention for once. Damn. Do y'all know how to listen? And as always, guys, like, follow, and share the YouTube channel. If you guys like what you're seeing, leave some comments, man. We want to know. I want to know if you like what we're on. You want to be on the show? Let me know. Hit me up at PeteVersusAnxietyPod@gmail.com. And as always, guys, enjoy the show. And by the way, did I mention to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well? Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure because some of y'all are hard of hearing in the back, may have to yell loud or get a megaphone or something. But, anyways, let's get today's show started. Y'all have a great one. Enjoy. Guys, welcome into another exciting episode of Pete versus Anxiety, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about enough. My guest today is the founder of the Soar with Tapping app, the one, the only, Amy Vincenza. How you doing?
I'm great, Pete. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, Amy, why don't you tell everybody a little more about your app and yourself and everything so they get a little better understanding of who you are?
Okay. I'm going to start a little bit on the young side, just because it'll give you a little bit of context about how I got here.
You tell them however you like to. It's your story. You let them know.
Great. So when I was little, I kind of grew up with the idea that my sister hated me. And my dad was an alcoholic, and he ended up leaving us and moving to Michigan with his other family. And my mom kind of checked out emotionally. So from my perspective, my little girl's perspective, my environment that I grew up in was kind of a not very welcoming one. And it kind of set me up to have really low self-esteem, really high anxiety, and a lot of fears about putting myself out there in the world, thinking that somebody else was going to abandon me in addition to my dad, thinking that, and I would turn myself inside out to make people like me because I was so afraid of them hating me like my sister did or ignoring me like my mom did. So I kind of became a chameleon and with no sense of myself, who I really was. I just thought that I had to be broken in some way for all these things around me to have happened, that I had major character defects. And of course, everybody hated me for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was with that understanding that I went throughout life for a long, long time. And with that understanding, obviously, came bouts of depression and eating disorders and, just really high anxiety a lot of the time, and addiction. And it wasn't until I had my daughter, and I was, she was 4 years old at the time. And I think everything kind of converged at once. All of my insecurities, I wasn't doing great at work. I wasn't being a great wife or even a great mother. And all of my insecurities about all of these different things kind of converged. And I was having major crisis moment in my life, lots of anxiety attacks, and just unable to function really in a lot of different areas. And it was at that time that I started using tapping on a lot and I had been working with a coach doing tapping for quite a while, but I was having limited success with it because I was only focusing on the symptoms that I was experiencing. I was working on like procrastination or the addiction itself, but not the underlying causes of those things. And so I was having limited success. But during this crisis moment, I just started focusing on all of my fears, like really going super deep fears of rejection, fears of abandonment, fears of not belonging, and tapping on myself probably for 2 weeks straight. I probably did like 30 to 45 minutes a day, which that's not that long. But if you're tapping on something that focused for that long, you experience really quick results.
Yeah.
And I did as well. My whole world started opening up in ways that I didn't even know were possible. I was letting go of fears. I was realizing that I'm more than I ever thought I was, and that these weren't really character defects, but a symptom of the traumas that I had experienced, but I had never called them traumas, um, until that point. And everything just became so crystal clear. I mean, it didn't solve all my problems at that time because we end up healing in layers, right?
Hmm.
But at that time, I just experienced such profound change in my understanding of who I was and how I relate to the world, that I found myself feeling like I can't keep this to myself. I have to make this available to other people. I have to tell them what I know because people are suffering when they don't have to.
Yeah.
And I have found out through my own experience that this is possible, and I needed to let people know. So
That
that's
sounds good
kind of
too.
what brought me here.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, when you speak from experience, though, it's really great because then people can see it actually works. Because when people are pitching things to people, like the idea, the concept of an app or something, it's like, okay, so have you used it before? And if your answer is well, no, then okay, well, lost interest right there because
Yeah,
you have no experience in it. But you're speaking from your own experience, like this works. This is something I've used myself and everything like that. I think it's more credibility to it for people when it comes to trying to get them to check out your app or whatever, trying the methods and things you're talking about because you've tried them yourself and they work personally for you as well. So
they did. They saved my life, in a real sense for
yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, especially, with abandonment and everything like that. Because I was abandoned when I was 10 by my mom. She just dropped me
Mhm.
off my dad's doorstep, and I've been dealing with those problems for years,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
never realized how much of a problem it really was until I finally started doing therapy for myself and found out that a lot of the root cause and a lot of my anger issues I was just so that. And then when I get into certain situations, I go into panic mode. Like, if you're gonna leave, you might as well just leave now because I don't think I can handle it again, And I always have those flashbacks to when I was 10 years old when she just dropped me there and just left me there. And it's like, how could someone that gave birth to you, that's your mother, that claims that they love you, but then they drop you there? And it's like you get
Yeah.
to that point where you just drop somebody off. It's like, when are you going to dump me next? Is the next question. What it came up. And me and her have had a great relationship since then, and I know she wants to have a better one, but there's a lot of things I have to deal with first on my end. So, but I can relate to that totally.
It's amazing how, when you isolate it down to your mom leaving, it's easy to isolate it to that moment, but the effects of that one event thread their way through every single decision you
Hmm.
make in your life. They thread their way through all of your relationships, whether it's a work relationship or a romantic relationship or a friendship of any kind. There's always, you're looking at those situations through the lens of being abandoned by your mom, and you don't really realize it until, like you said, you have these clarity moments through therapy or tapping or something along those lines that
Yeah.
show you how deeply it has affected every aspect of your life.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the thing too, is I didn't realize how big of effect it had, like the ripple effect it had going forward.
Yep.
And it's just like, as I look back, it's just like I was not the most pleasant person to be around early on. And it's just it's hard to admit it to yourself that you made these mistakes, because a lot of people don't like to admit the wrong and things like that. But it's a
Mhm.
lot of things. And now I'm trying to rebuild relationships with people that were affected by it. And it's hard for them to understand because they saw me from that perspective and angle, but they don't. it's more getting them to understand that, listen, this is not you. It was a me thing the whole time. It's something I've been dealing with. And I didn't realize the effect of what it had happened to me, and,
Mhm.
things like that, all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's great that you're going back and making amends, though. That's huge.
yeah, it's been a rough ride. I've been reaching out to people and things like that and letting them know, trying to bridge back gaps of things that I ruined. It didn't help though that I eventually ended up with a narcissist for 15 years. It just really just caused it to become more of a problem because I was dealing with all those issues. She was playing on my anger and things like that, getting me upset. And then I was appeared to be the monster because I was so upset, and she knew how to feel the fire even more so that she could say, "Oh, well, no, no, look, he's the one that's crazy. It's not me."
Yeah, it's all, in relationships like that, it's easy to feel manipulated, but
Mhm.
then you also know that your trauma is contributing to the problem,
Mhm.
right? Because you can't see things with the clarity of not having all of those
Yeah.
experiences in your
Yeah.
past. You look at it through those lenses again, and it just becomes a lot more elevated as a result.
Yeah, and it's just like now I look at things from a different perspective and kind of analyze things before I respond. I mean, there are
Mhm.
times I do go off, I lose my cool a couple times here and there. But I mean, I'm still working on it. I'm not perfect. I'm human. It happens. I have these things that happen. I'm working to get to a better place. But now I do analyze a lot more things as conversations and arguments come up and things like that. I
Yeah,
tend to look at it from the other side and just kind of stare at like, oh, is it better to go A or B? I'm always giving myself choices. Is it better to go route A or route B on this choice? And then I'm really analyzing. And if I mess up, I'll get quiet and I'll start thinking about it and just start playing the conversation back in my head. Like, hey man, what do we
mhm.
mess up here? Give myself a little self-talk, like, hey man, we've got to do better than this. We can't continue to do these things because they're becoming a problem if we continue to do these issues, and it's a lot of self-editing happens.
Yeah, but that is huge progress, considering where you came from
Oh yeah,
to
definitely.
that, that
Yeah,
is huge progress.
it is, and
Yeah,
it's been a rough road to get there, and it's a lot of things I gotta come to terms with, and
yeah,
it's never fun, and I can speak from experience. Anybody listening, that it's not a fun ride. I'll tell you right now, but it's like at the end
I
of the
know.
day, you had to hold yourself accountable when it comes to things like understand that part of the arguments sometimes are you, even though you don't want to admit it to, it's partly you. I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
adding more anger to the fire, the conversation gets heated, and people start saying things they can't take back. And it's like, those are
yeah.
things you got to be careful with what you say, because once you say something, a lot of times you can't pull that back out of a conversation. It's already said,
I
it's already out
know.
there. And now you've got to deal with the aftermath of the things you said.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree.
So let's talk about your app. So how did you come up with it? Was it just something like like I know you said the tapping worked. So is that what gave you the idea to get to the app? I know I visited your website and you can download it and stuff like that. So you want to explain to people a little bit how it works so they have a better idea?
Yeah, so, the idea came from, just a colleague, somebody that I was having a meeting with, and he suggested it. And at first I was like, No, no, me have an app? I can't even
Right.
imagine it?" But then, the seed had been planted in my brain, and I couldn't let the idea go. And then I started asking the question, why not me? Why not? This
Exactly.
would give tapping, more exposure than
Mhm.
it already has. And I ended up looking at all of the tapping apps that were available at the time. And I saw a hole that needed to be filled. And that hole was that what was out there wasn't going deep enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to get to the core issues that I knew had healed me on such a deep level. And even, tapping scripts that were out there that focused on, fear of rejection, but in my opinion, barely touched the surface.
Yeah.
And while it can put a Band-Aid over an issue like that to help you get through a moment, in my opinion, it wasn't going to really heal you at the core level and allow, me or anybody else using it to move forward through life without having that fear of rejection. I mean, can you imagine how much freer you would be without having that fear at all? Like, that would totally change your perspective and the way that you look
Yeah,
at the world
definitely.
and walk through the world. That's what I wanted to give people, and that was the aim with creating my own app.
Yeah,
I I really focused on helping people to get to that core level. Well, not just with the tapping scripts that are available on the app, but with the videos that kind of help support. They show people how to work through depression, how to work through anxiety, how to work through procrastination or addiction or things like that. So that it's not just, I mean, you go into the app and there's over 170 tapping scripts, I think. And, with somebody dealing with depression, it can be really overwhelming to look at that and think, where the hell do I start? Right.
right.
And so it's just trying to give people these key tools that can align them in a way that will make it easier. I mean, you still have to go through the difficult feelings. And moving through them is really the only way to release them. And that tapping app does it in a way that is as gentle as possible and as contained as possible so that you feel kind of held in the process, and you're gonna be okay. You're not gonna break apart. You're gonna be okay, and you'll make it through to the other side. And when you do, the clouds are gonna clear up. They will clear up. So that was my whole intention,
Yeah.
was giving people not just all of the tools, but a pathway to follow, steps to follow so that they could get from one side to the other.
I think it's great when you do your research. Like you said, you went and looked at the market and seen what was there and seen, okay, these are what everybody else is doing. What can I do different than them? You didn't try and just
Mhm.
put something out that was similar to them. You just went beyond it. You're like, well, hey, they're not doing these things. So let's cover these issues that these people are failing to do. And I think that's
Right.
great when it comes to anything because it was the same thing when like I told people I was talking about doing a podcast and a guy, similar to your colleague that you guys were talking about. I was like, yeah, I'll do it one day. I kept talking about it. And then one day I just said, you know what? F it. Let's just go for it. Why not? And here I am. I
Yeah.
had a one previous to this one I did, learned a lot of things along the way, learned a lot of things not to do along the way. In
Yeah.
case anybody finds it, I apologize. It was the earlier stages of me. It is what it is. I can't apologize anymore than what happened. We had some things that happened with a co-host that took things to another level. And I was, instead of taking control of it at first, I did it. And then I was like, one day I was just like, you know what? I need to take control of this wildfire. It's going out of hand.
Yeah.
Let's reel this thing in. And that's when I decided to take a break. And then that's when Pete for Anxiety started after that. So, but that's great though that the app, like you said, 170. Now, how did you come up with 170? Is it like different people's input to these things, or these, where do you get all that information for that kind of stuff though?
It was mostly me.
Okay.
Um, I did consult some books about some of the main, what are like the main phobias and
Yeah.
fears that people have. Um, consulted some books about uh, um, the emotional aspect of a lot of different physical ailments.
Yeah.
And then I just started. I should go back and say that my childhood experience with my sister and her hating me because I was trying to make her like me as much as possible. I got really good at being empathetic, really
Yeah.
good at trying to understand how other people feel about things. And that became my superpower, to be honest. And so I can easily put myself in other people's positions and imagine what it is they're thinking and feeling. And that, coupled with a lot of research on modern therapy,
Hmm.
helped me to create all of the tapping scripts. Now, at this point, I am consulting with other people to create more categories than I currently have,
Yeah, of course.
because those aren't my areas of expertise, and I want somebody that really knows their stuff on those. So we're continuing to add. At this point, we have a whole another section on women's health and fertility. And right now, there are at least 40 tapping scripts being created. And so that's going to be the next chunk of information added. But
That's awesome, though. I mean,
yeah,
I love it too when people focus certain groups like men or women gender wise because it's so interesting to see the things that you can do with all this stuff, and then the fact that you're talking to experts is even better because now you're really backing up your information because it's like now I have these people that are adding input, and I could cite them and say, well, these are the information I've got from these, you know what I mean, and things like
Yeah,
that, which is great because you're doing your
yeah,
due diligence really at the end of the day, which is awesome to hear though. So I got a question for you. So when you told
yeah.
people about what your app was, did they look at you kind of weird at first? Like tapping, how could tapping have so much power? You know what I'm saying? Like you tell somebody that and they're like, I understand those kind of things because I have a better understanding since doing this show of like a lot of other things. I've been open to everything possible,
Yeah,
all kinds of alternative healing things like that. Nothing to me now seems too surprising as I
right.
start learning more stuff. So after this show, I'm obviously going to go download the app because I want to play around with it and see what it's like because I got
I
to
hope
know
you do.
now.
Yeah.
I definitely got to go try this and see because I'm curious now. My brain is really curious. I was like, but trying to sell that to people at first, they're just looking at you like, well, Amy, tapping. What does tapping got to do with anything?
Honestly, most people assume that I'm talking about tap dancing, and it's everywhere I go, it's educating people about what tapping actually is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so
So
great though because then you see the lights in their eyes go up and they're like, oh, really? I didn't know that was possible. And
yeah,
it's
and then
great.
the skepticism comes right after that.
Of course, everybody's skeptical about anything new, like somebody trying to pitch an idea of something to you. I thought when I started at first, I was real nervous about talking to people about this podcast and what I was doing because you never know the response people get with mental health. But
Right.
surprisingly, a lot of people were like, "Really, man? That's pretty interesting. People don't talk about that enough." I'm like, "I know, right? Isn't that crazy? Like, maybe you should check it out sometime." Now I'm like, I'll pitch people on the spot. Hey, listen, I run this podcast. You should come check it out.
Yeah.
People ask me like, "How you been?" I'm like, I've been busy, man, and they're busy doing what? For people that don't know, I'll just start telling them, yeah, I run a mental health podcast. This is what I do. It's called Pete for Anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm on a radio. I got a network and everything else I'm a part of and stuff like this. And they're all just jaw hits the floor like, huh? How? I'm like, just dumb luck, man. That's all I can say. Because
Isn't
when I
it
started
wonderful,
this,
though, that you can have those conversations? I mean, when we were kids, we never talked about this kind of
oh
stuff.
no,
It's become so much part of the conversation, and it just warms my heart that people are
a lot
feeling
more
brave
people than you
enough
think
to
would be
bring this
are
up.
interested too is crazy because some people, if you go based off just like the reaction, a lot of people at first are kind of hesitant, but then they were like, "Yeah, man, let me go check that out. Actually, that sounds pretty cool. Let me check it out. I need something to listen to when I'm on there." Like, "Hey, yeah, man, I'm on Spotify, I'm on iHeartRadio, and all that stuff." And they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm pretty much everywhere. I'm like Visa, everywhere you want me to be." And they'll just start laughing so hard at me. I'm like, go check it out, see what you think, man. And if there are people that come back in, I'm like, let me know what you think, man. And I know one person said he was so moved by the fact that I had done a message for him. He had lost a friend, unfortunately, had a
Mm,
real crazy incident he had told me about. And I left a message right in the beginning of the episode. I told him, I said, hey, man, look out. If you're obviously you're going to be at the funeral Monday when this episode airs, because normally I was doing Mondays. I decided to pop up my schedule at the beginning of the year. Greatest decision ever was to open my schedule from just strictly Mondays to just every day of the week,
yeah,
except for Saturdays and Sundays where I have time to recharge and things like that, just to try and get more people in and meet more people. It was the greatest thing ever. He saw the video and he was just sending me like all these messages like, hey man, I really appreciate it. And all I did was just ask people for thoughts and prayers for him because he had lost a friend
mm,
and it was a tragic situation and things like that.
yeah.
And it's so interesting to hear people's responses because they're like, I appreciate what you do. And all I'm doing, honestly, is having a conversation that no one else really wants to have, or they claim we're having enough of, because based on the demand for this show, I don't think we're having enough conversations about it, honestly.
I couldn't agree more. I think the emotional and mental, awareness space is gonna explode even more than it already has
Yeah.
because of people like you making it a common conversation.
Yeah, there's some other people too. I'm going to highlight too. They're coming up. I think this Monday is when I have another one that does a mental health podcast too. I invite everybody to come. And the thing is, Amy, I don't stray away. I go if they're female strictly oriented, bring them on. Let's go. Let's have the conversation because there's two
Yeah,
sides to every conversation. Heck, I
yeah.
even finished reading a book. It was about breast cancer, and people looked at me weird every time I told them, "Yeah, I'm reading this memoir right now. It's really good." And they're all staring at me funny, like, "What?" I'm like, "It's called The Mastectomy I've Always Wanted." And they're like, "Huh? You're reading it?" I'm like, hell yeah, man. She sent me a free copy of the book. Why not? I'm going to read this thing because she
Yeah,
literally reached out to me, asked me. Erica Campbell's the author. She was like, hey, Pete, would you mind reading this book or yeah, why not? Send it on. Let's go. Why not? What harm do I have reading this? And after
uh,
reading it, I was like, damn, I was so moved. I was like, wow, the
Yeah.
vulnerability it took for this woman to put these photos of the aftermath of what she had dealt with.
Oh,
And
wow.
these are real photos because she said that one thing she kept
Mhm.
hearing is that people said it doesn't have a face to it. So she's like, let me give it a face. And like, now it's got a face and it looks pretty butchery in the first end of it. She was saying, like, she called them Frankenstein stitches. And I was like, they look like
Oh,
saw
yeah.
stitches to me, man. Look a little rough stitching there, but
I'm nodding my head because I am a breast cancer survivor too, so I know
it's a great,
exactly what you're talking about.
it's a great book. I'm telling you right now, it's a great book. If you anybody that hasn't seen it, you know somebody that knows somebody's dealing with
Yeah.
breast cancer, wants to know the better insight, it is fantastic. It's called The Mastectomy. I always want it. I actually have a copy of it right here. Let me pull it out. I've
I'm
showed this
writing
to people several times. And I've showed this to people. I'm like, yeah, y'all got to read this book.
yeah, I'm
Now, I
writing that
don't.
down.
This is what it is.
Oh,
Just give you
nice.
an idea what the cover you're looking for. I don't know how well you can see it.
I can see it, yeah.
Yeah, but it's a fantastic book, and she even signed it for me and personalized it and said,
Oh,
left a
that's
little
sweet.
mess. So it was so awesome. But she was like, she was so moved by the fact that I was willing to read the book. I was like, why not? I mean, you send me a free copy. Why not? I'll check it out. Why not? It's not even just because it was free. It's because you wanted me to read it. I'm like, sure, why not? Like, you're going to be on the show. I'd rather have an idea what I'm reading, talking about here than versus just talking on my backside.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a great book though. By the way, for anybody that wants to understand, she said she's had male readers come reach out to her and say that, hey, now I better understand what my loved ones were dealing with, and things like that,
Mhm.
going through it all. But it was great though. She splashed little bits of poems in there too that we found out during the show that she said that came from her own personal journal though.
Oh, that's nice.
So,
That's
but it was,
very
but yeah, it was great. Like I said, I enjoy inviting people to all types of things. Even when I saw yours, I was like, man, I got to know more about this. It's pretty cool. The tapping thing is just like, because all you're doing is tapping. You're not doing anything. You're not asking people to do much. Like, hey guys,
no,
this is what you follow, and things like that. And I think it's great though that you're coming up with new and innovative ways for people. I know skepticism is going to be the regardless because they're like, what is tapping going to do for me?
right,
Okay,
right.
guy, calm down and just check it out. Relax. Don't be scared of the unknown because that's what happens as it is.
The act of tapping is pretty easy, it
Yeah.
doesn't take much to tap on your energy meridians and go around your body. The hardest part is actually feeling the feelings,
Yeah.
and most people aren't used to that, especially people with anxiety, because
Yeah.
most of the time we're up in our heads,
Mhm.
right? We're thinking about the past, we're worrying about the future, and actually feeling feelings requires you to be down in your body, which is the place where all of the unresolved trauma lives.
Yep.
And so it's often really uncomfortable to be down in your body and feel those feelings. And so I'm not gonna lie, it's hard work and work that people often feel afraid of at first because it's so foreign to what we've learned even, just living out in the world. We're not
Right.
encouraged to feel our feelings. We're not honored to feel our feelings. We are often shamed and judged for
Mhm.
it. Women are called hysterical, and the only emotion that men are typically allowed is anger.
Yeah.
And so we don't have a vocabulary even to understand what our feelings are half the time.
Yeah.
And so it's work to kind of get in touch with that and not be afraid of it and actually feel the feelings, but it's feeling those feelings that releases them from your body. It's that combination of tapping on your energy meridians and then saying the verbal cues at the same time and feeling it that releases it completely. And it will happen faster than you can imagine. And so once you have the courage and are able to lean into those feelings and see what happens on the other side after a really short period of time, then you start getting not afraid of the feelings.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to get rid of the feelings at all. We're trying to just let them be normal.
Yeah, exactly.
We're letting go of the feelings that are attached to certain events, like the traumas that you and I talked about with
Yeah,
mom leaving
definitely.
and dad leaving. And because then we can release that as something that holds us back. But we're
Mhm.
not trying to eliminate anger. We're not trying to eliminate hurt or sadness, because those are all vital to the human experience. But what we're trying to do is not store them in our bodies. We're trying to release them so that they don't hold us back in any way, shape, or form. They don't start creating fears,
Yeah.
creating limiting beliefs about what we are capable of and not capable of. That we're just free from any ties from those things, and we can move through our feelings.
Yeah, exactly. And and the other thing too, they always say is that women are crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's a misconception though, because when it comes to girls and boys, being a girl dad, I understand. When I was had the girls on my own, they stayed with me for a while. I learned so many different things because as a guy, we're programmed differently than women. Okay, hands
Yeah.
down, they're very emotional. I wasn't very emotional or in tune with that, so I didn't understand a lot of things. I learned a lot more things than I had to learn
Yeah.
about the female anatomy, things like, stuff like that. I had to experience all these things that I always joke around with people with that at first I always thought was a joke. Now I've dealt with it. It's like, it's nothing new to me. Nothing phases me at this point. It's like, okay, well, it's just normal. It's normal to me. It doesn't feel weird like it's an awkward conversation, like, especially people that talk about their feelings. It's hard sometimes for us to put out the words there, what we want to say. And for guys, it's always
Mhm.
been, well, you got to be the alpha male. You got to be the head of the family. You got to do this. You can't talk about your feelings because you're weak. You do
Yeah.
that, you're a sissy boy. And things like that you get told all the time. And it's like, guys, we gotta stop doing this, man. Like, it's okay to talk about, your thoughts and things like that, thoughts of suicide, things like that. All these things that don't get talked about enough, that people, like, when you start talking about them, they have panic attacks, man. Like, people start freaking out when you say the word suicide to people. They start freaking out. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
man, I thought about killing myself the other day. And then people just instantly just go, oh, well, I'm done with this conversation. Check out. Time to go. I got to go. I got something else. You know what I mean? I don't know why we're so scared of them. It's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's really funny when you start talking about certain subjects. Like, I had a person on the show I was talking about recently, named.
Oops. Pete, you're frozen. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me, Pete? I'm not sure if I should wait here or try and go out and come back. Hmm. Oh, Pete went out. I bet he's coming back. Hang tight if you're listening.
All right, I'm back. Sorry, guys, I'm having a little
Hey,
experience
man.
there and everything else. But what I
Hey,
was saying,
man.
I was like, all right, Amy was holding down the show from when I was gone, guys. Hey, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. But the thing is, like, men need to talk about our feelings more. It's like we need to stop bottling these things up, because what happens is you suppress them. And what Brian was talking about, what I started to say, is that he was talking about suicide ideation. He had told us that morning, 30 minutes into the conversation that we and him were having, right about the point at where we're at now. He started saying, "Hey, Pete, it just started going on this tangent." I was like, "All right, let's see what he's going to say next." And he started saying that he had thought about killing himself that morning, had the gun in his hand, was sitting at the edge of his bed thinking about it that morning. And I was just like,
Oh my gosh.
oh, okay, buddy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
he was real upset though. You could tell, and he was telling us that it was because his friend had committed suicide earlier last year, that
Yeah.
he was still dealing with it. And when he let that go, you could see a change in his mood a little bit. But he was literally, this man was crying on the air. And I
Yeah.
was like, guys, I'm like, I'm so sorry, buddy. You know what I mean? I was just trying to do what I could do in the moment. I was freaking out in my mind. I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh God, oh no, what is he saying? Because it's like you don't expect these things to happen, but at the same time, I had about 20 people emailing me and messaging me, hey, is he okay? I'm like, yeah, he's great
Mhm.
now. I talk to him all the time and things like that. But it's like, it's crazy because you're real. the real raw emotion, and he was talking about these things, and I don't know if he intended to talk about this, but it brought a lot of awareness to, like, hey, these are things that people think of, like, people like him have a lot of things going for them. Doesn't mean they
Yeah.
still can't have these thoughts all the time that are going in his head. He's like, I think about it weekly. And so I check in with them all the time, but I think
Yeah.
his episode really opened the eyes to a lot of people. Like, hey, man, just because you have everything, you're successful, doesn't mean you can't have these thoughts going through your head at any point in life.
Yeah, opening up the conversation makes you realize how many people actually struggle with really dark thoughts about themselves or their life. And I it helps to know that you're not alone. It helps to know that you're not the only one struggling out there.
Right?
And that's why your podcast is doing such a great service for people so that they can, just speak the words. They can
Exactly.
get them out of their own heads and speak the words and connect with somebody else over something hard.
And I'm creating a safe space too, so people come here and
Yeah.
talk about anything. I do have an interesting guest coming up this week. She's got a story to tell. Like, I've had people on here tell me that they've had like 5 or 6. There's one gentleman I'm thinking of, Alex. Actually, he was a real good looking guy. You go based on society standards. Okay, Alex,
Yeah.
good looking dude, can't have any problems. Alex is good looking. He's trying to get into Major League Baseball. He was on his way through the system, getting there. But this guy had, like, what did he say? Alex had like 7 to 8 times he had thought about killing himself, and it was just like
Oh,
he never.
yeah.
But he had a lot of friends around him that had killed himself too, though. I think is what started the whole thing. And he had thought himself, and it was just like it proves once again, that it's like it's a conversation a lot of people are not comfortable with. And he started mentioning, a lot of people had seen it, didn't know that he had even had those thoughts, and they're like, "Man, dude, I didn't know you struggled with all that kind of stuff." And I was like, there you go, man. And they're like, unlike I tell people when they come in here, it's whatever you want to share. This is complete safe space. No one will judge you. If someone starts trying to judge you anyway, that's it, done. We cut them out of the conversation. We kick them out. We don't deal with that kind of stuff here, because I want them to feel as comfortable as possible. And that's why my conversations are conversations, not interviews. They're more like, I'll ask a couple questions here and there and things like that. But I try to keep it casual, because you tend to get more out of people when they feel more comfortable with you and start sharing
Absolutely.
things, that you never would think you would heard before. So
Yeah. Yeah. And having the conversation starts the healing.
it does. It really does.
Just does. Yeah. That's the
So
one of the important aspects of tapping is saying the words out loud,
yeah,
actually giving voice to a lot of the feelings and fears that you've had forever so that,
yeah.
um and I've had many clients say how cathartic it is to actually just say the words instead of just having the thoughts spinning around in their heads.
It's powerful too, because when you talk about it, it gets it out of your head and out to the open, and it's out there. And a
Mhm.
lot of people say when you speak it into
Mhm.
fruition, it's a lot better, because now the thought's not racing in your head; it's in front of you now, and you can, start to let go of the thought because it goes straight out, and things
Yeah.
like that. And that's the great thing about the tapping app too, is that, like you said, you're tapping and they're talking about it, and
Yeah.
it's just releasing it, because now their brain's not thinking about it. Especially us with anxiety, like you said, it's up there. It's going 1,000 miles an hour, spinning like the gravitron up there, man. Things
All
like
those
you
thoughts
start,
are there, yeah.
you know what I mean? And then you start worrying about things, and people don't realize that's what it's like, man. It's like we start worrying about it constantly. Things like that just cycle, like the smallest things too. Just get in your head, start going okay, and then starts picking up speed and just starts going, and just until it starts driving you crazy, and you start responding to it, and you feel like your head's gonna explode a little bit, because you're just like it's all you can think of, and then you start thinking the negative thoughts, and these thoughts of negativity of these and that, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's rough for me. Sometimes it's rough, other times it's not. It's gotten better for me as I learned to, kind of speak it out, because my wife's the one that taught me that too. She was like, yeah, just say it out loud. Sometimes you just got to shout it out or something, and randomly she'll shout real loud, and I'm like, what the hell was that, dude? And it was just exactly what she told me. She's like, she does the same thing. She does just shout it out, just say stop, and her thoughts will stop going. And it,
Yeah.
it sounds weird to people, but at the same time, that's how it works, things like that too. So
One of the things I really tried to do with the app too is just honor and acknowledge all of those, spinning thoughts that are happening.
mhm.
For example, like just talking about the fear of rejection, saying things like, "It's no wonder I have this fear. Based on my experiences as a kid, of course I'm gonna have these fears." I mean, they all make sense in the big picture. When I'm looking at my life and the experiences that I've had, these thoughts and feelings make sense. And honoring them and acknowledging them in that way enough, giving them their day in court, so to speak, allows you to kind of come to terms with them and release all of the tension around it. And I kept talking, even though I know that Pete has his camera has frozen again. So I know he's not going to respond to that. Oh, he went out again, and now we can wait for him to come back. I think I'll just keep talking about that thought just to fill in the space. But I think that's one of the most important things that I tried to do with the app was to help to make ourselves feel less wrong and to stop the inner judgment and the inner criticism that goes along with having these thoughts. And if you're anything like me, you might really judge yourself.
Right.
Oh, there you are.
I'm back. Sorry.
I kept talking just to keep the sound going for your listeners.
All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up here in a few minutes here. Clearly, the weather outside is not agreeing with me and Amy's conversation right now. But Amy, go ahead and start plugging some of your social media. I do have them all down in the description for anybody that's listening to this that wants to come and look at them. I do have her website, Instagram, all the stuff she has listed on that, stuff like that.
Yes, I am on all of the socials.
TikTok included, guys.
TikTok included, but I wanted to get my page because if you go to soarwithtapping.com/podcast-special/ your listeners can get 50% off of their first annual subscription.
There you go, guys. There you go. Any special codes they need to use? Just go to the website.
Just go to the website. There you will find the code, and then you can put that in the app when you download it.
Sounds good. I'll definitely link it in the bio and everything down below. Before we have to hang up here, because, the weather is not agreeing with me today, as you can see.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Amy, let me ask you one quick question, though. If there was one stigma about mental health you could break, what would it be?
That any of our feelings are wrong, that there's anything bad about any feelings. There is nothing bad. They are all normal. They are all justified in one way or another based on your experience as a kid and or your feelings. It doesn't matter. Nothing is wrong. It just is. It just exists. So if we could stop judging and criticizing ourselves for feeling a certain way and just allow ourselves to feel it, that would be the greatest gift that you could give yourself.
Amazing. I love it. That's so great. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up this episode of Pete's Anxiety for the weather decides to cancel our conversation even further. You all know where you can find me. I'm always here Mondays, 10 a.m., 3 p.m. on the Oracle Talk Radio Network. I'm here during the week. So if you hit the subscribe button on YouTube, you'll be able to see us there anytime you like. I'm always on Spotify, all the way down to iHeartRadio, where this conversation will eventually end up to down the road and everything like that. So listen, if you're subscribed, you'll know exactly when it hits. And as I like to say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you could do could save somebody's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete Vince Anxiety, signing off saying, hey, don't ask how your day is. Ask how your mental health is today.